Hey everybody, welcome to Cycle News. We've got a new road test for you today. Today we've just jumped off the Yamaha MT-10. Now this is the first big redevelopment really of the MT-10 since it came out in 2017. It was originally called the FZ or FZ 10. Now that FZ lineup was really an American thing. It was more like around the rest of the world it was known as the MT. Maximum torque, I think, is the correct term for it. Now in 2017 they changed the model lineup with the MT-09, the MT-07, formerly FZ-09, FZ-07. So yeah, now we've got the consistent lineage, lineage as far as the name goes. Now that model was based, if you guys know the American market a little bit, you'll remember that Yamaha bought out an R1S. Now the R1S was a detuned version of the R1. Now it didn't have titanium valves and things like that. The R1S had steel conrods, rods, steel valves. I think it had a lower compression ratio, obviously lower performance and a lower price as well. Now, and obviously, yeah, lower horsepower. But that R1S pretty much became the basis for the MT model. And for 2022, the engine really hasn't changed a hell of a lot. It's pretty close to what it was before. But the biggest thing that we've seen now with the MT is the new electronics that have come out. So new electronics are basically what you now get on an R1. Slide control, wheelie control, engine brake control, brake control. Now the brake control actually is different to cornering ABS. We'll get into that in a bit. But the brake control basically bleeds off the ABS in conjunction with the lean angle of the motorcycle. And that's all done obviously via the new IMU, the new 6-axis IMU. Again, swiped from the parts bin, taken out from the Yamaha R1. Now, it's pretty close to really what you're going to get with the R1. Like, it's pretty impressive what they've managed to do. You also get cruise control as well. Happy days. And the best thing about this thing, believe it or not, this thing is $13,999 MSRP here in the United States. I'm not sure about the rest of the markets. You'll have to do your own research on that, guys. But that's pretty astonishing value when you consider, I guess, the basic Aprilia Tuono, the lower level of Aprilia Tuono V4. Obviously, you got the base model and you got the factory. That is what, $3,000 more, nearly $17,000 odd, and everything else just goes up from there. So if you're kind of trying to play in this hyper naked market, I guess you could say, then you've got some pretty big money that you're going to have to throw at it. And 14 grand, let me tell you, is pretty bloody good money, value for money these days. Not bad from Yamaha. Okay, so when you're looking at the bike, it doesn't look that different, I guess, to a 2017 model, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 20, you know what I mean? It doesn't look that different. It's been nipped and tucked everywhere. You know, you've got a new front headlight assembly. You've got, a slightly different bodywork down the side of the bike. The passenger seat has been redesigned, as has the surrounds around the back of that seat. But really, it still looks like an MT-10. Now, you also got these really cool, they're almost like eyebrow lights that sit above the headlights themselves. They look really, really sick. And it's kind of neatened up the whole aesthetic of the bike. Because really, when you look at the skin deep, the chassis is basically the same. The chassis comes from the R1. The engine is pretty much the same as well. It's not that different, but the electronics are the biggest things now, which is the big thing, which is going to set it apart really from everything else. And let's be honest, really, you don't really need that much. You don't need that much change in the motor. Cross-plane crank R1S derived inline 4-cylinder motor. Thing's a powerhouse. Like it is a proper naked superbike, and in my opinion, it's kind of been the most underrated of your hyper sport naked bikes these days. Certainly in terms of value for money, I think the thing's basically unbeatable. However, once you get out on the road, thankfully all that stuff is not just hyperbole. It does actually translate into a really, really good motorcycle. It's been a long time since I've ridden an MT-10 or FC-10 as it was back in the day. Yeah, so they're very, very, very good motorcycles. The suspension is pretty much unchanged as it was. It's got, I think, 0.2 mil longer wheelbase, which basically means you just pull it back in the chain a little bit more. It's pretty much the same as what it was in terms of the dynamics of the motorcycle, the suspension, the chassis, the engine's pretty close. One of the big things with the new 22 MT-10 is you've got a spring, a slider, and a new gear mechanism within the throttle itself. So that gives you much more of a controlled feel at the twist grip. They're basically trying to mimic the feeling of an old school, carbureted throttle, which is become a bit of a thing these days because motorcycles, as we all know, are getting more and more choked by emissions, which hence, you feel twist grip. So they've tried to smoothen out that throttle as much as possible. I mean, the thing is so infinitely adjustable as well. To that end, you've got 4 different power modes, 4 different ECU modes as well. All of those ECU modes, by the way, can be changed to how you want. So if you want mode B with C power, or with level 3 power, level 1 being the highest, level 4 being the least, with 6 level whatever traction control, wheelie control, brake control, all that stuff, it's all infinitely adjustable. However, they do come with preset modes from the factory if you really want to just plug and play with what they've given you. So Yamaha's given you the option of being able to do all that sort of stuff, which is really, really good. Another little cool fact is Yamaha's given you a variable speed limiter, which allows you to set a given speed via the dash. You can say set it to 50 mile an hour or whatever it is that you want to do, and that will at least stop you from getting pinged, hopefully, when you're going through heavily radar controlled areas, as there are many, especially if you live in Australia, you'll know all about it, around the world. And so it's kind of cool. It's a bit like a pit lane speed limiter. So it's bang, hit it on your control, and that's the speed you're going to do. You're never going to be able to go over it. So cool little thing there from Yamaha. Once you get riding, the first thing you'll probably notice is that the seat is a fair bit firmer than before, and I personally love that. Like, I spent over in North Carolina, I spent the best part of a day. It was probably 8 or so hours, 9 hours maybe in the seat, and I felt really, really comfortable at the end of it. It does get a little bit hard, but then again, try sitting down on anything for that amount of time and tell me that you don't get uncomfortable. But it does feel, it does kind of tie in nicely with the whole ergonomics and the aesthetics of the bike. When you're sitting in there, like, you're very, very nicely planted. It's no weight at all on your wrists. Your legs have got a nice amount of room. They've changed the shape of the tank as well, so it's a little bit narrower at the tank, so your legs aren't quite as splayed out as what they once were on the original MT-10. But realistically, it's very, very similar to what it was before. It feels very similar. It powers into corners really well. The agility of that chassis is never in doubt. The brakes aren't the best. Stability under braking is good. However, braking power and braking feel, unfortunately, is a little bit limited, which is something that, if you guys have ridden an R1 out there, out in the day, the last couple of years especially, basically everyone complains about the R1's brakes, and unfortunately this is a bit of another case in point. The master cylinder, I think, is a bit more to blame there for that, but it's $14,000 for this bike, so they've got to cut corners somewhere. It's not like you're going to not get the brakes when you need them, but those performance riders out there, when they love that little minute feel at the lever, probably going to get on your nerves a little bit, as it did for me over the ride. You've got KYB fully adjustable suspension front and rear, 4.7 inches of wheel travel front and rear. Now, this is obviously not the same as the Öhlins, the semi-adjustable Öhlins that you get, but it is a little bit more of a firmer ride, but you translate that theory into riding through the canyons or just up your favorite twisty road, things like that, it's going to make a lot of sense straight away. If you're just using this thing to go zipping up and down to the shops and back, you'll probably find the rides a little bit harsh. But overall, I think it's much better that they've kind of set it up more for that sportier style of riding. They also have the MT-09 and the MT-07 for more commuting, that kind of style of riding. But the MT-10, let's face it, the MT-10 is Yamaha's best big slog at the Europeans in terms of the hyper sport naked bike kind of category. So they've done really, really well, I think, with the suspension. We rode, as I say, for a long, long time, didn't find it to be overly uncomfortable, but when it came time to really get after it, it's a good thing. Speaking of getting after it, that engine is brilliant. The motorcycle now has a new quick shifter, which is one of the best out there, especially from the Japanese. Like, this thing's just nick, 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 nick. It's just beautiful. Like, goes up and down gears so well. Never missed a gear. It's a nice light shift as well. Beautiful thing. So Yamaha has done a really good job there. Overall, this is a very nicely executed motorcycle from Yamaha. When you consider the price, best part of 14,000 odd bucks, and that's MSRP. That's before you go throwing on your taxes and your dealer charges and that kind of stuff here in America. Once you sort of put that on, they're probably going to be out the door for a bit over 15. Don't know exactly. But it's a really, really nicely made motorcycle from Yamaha. They're strong as houses, those bikes. They very, very rarely break down. They're made really, really well. The build quality is excellent. The ride is very, very good. Electronics, I mean, it's got cruise control. It's got every electronic that the R1's got. You know, what more do you want? I mean, it's certainly got more electronics than you need, at least in my opinion. But overall, yeah, an excellent bike from Yamaha. I really can't speak highly enough about it.